If you're 22, it's time to pack it up. Time to go into the retirement home or the hospice center, whatever it may be. Because if you're not accomplished right now, you're not retired. You haven't paid off all your parents, mortgage, all their debts, and you don't have a really hot girlfriend and you don't make all this money. It's over for you. Time to pack it up. No big muscles, no future, no nothing. No, I'm kidding. But there's kind of like this trend going on with people that are like in this age group, and then the younger people, the generation after us, they're kind of just like, oh my God, it's like at 22 they put you in the soup, and at 23 they chop off your legs or something like that. It's just like some funny thing going around, but it leads me to believe that there are actually people who believe that at this stage, um, it is possible to be in that sort of scenario. And yes, there are cases where that is certainly true, and there are definitely some exceptional people out there. But I don't want to set this notion that everyone has to accomplish it, and certainly not everyone will act in this certain way because they don't have the motivation for it. And I said in previous videos, um, having a lack of motivation to do something or accomplish something, have a passion in life, is not necessarily a bad thing. You just follow whatever path it may take you on. There's some people who literally spend 40 years working in, I guess, like in an environment, like at a job and workplace, and they find that fine. That's kind of like example with the Japanese salaryman. That's basically what they do. I'll get into the example later. But I'm not gonna sit here and like talk about my own issues pertaining to this, because at one point I definitely felt like this like a year ago, and I got myself back on the right track. But more so, what are we doing in our 20s right now, uh, and why are we doing it? Because of some expectations or social media. I talked about expectations of social media in our previous video, but I think our generation definitely has the highest expectations and social pressure that we put on each other than any other generation before us. And that, strictly speaking, we have a lot of issues. And a lot of other generations have a lot of issues, but I think we have a lot more social issues. So let's talk about it. So the first thing I want to touch on is we kind of wake up every single day. We have a mindless pursuit of these sort of goals or checklists that we want to do. For example, every day that I wake up, I know that I need to go to the gym, and going to the gym is not a bad thing, but that is something that instantly clicks in your mind. That is like a sense of duty that you have because you want to pursue something. I want to improve it in the gym, right? So I want to succeed in that way. So every day I'm gonna go. So every day is kind of like the same repetitious goal, and we kind of make this out to be a to-do list that we have in our life. And that to-do list is a lot different than it was a couple years ago, or 60, 80 years ago, or something like that. Because I believe our generation has a lot of opportunity, but I also think we are working ourselves to death to try and speedrun life, basically. I think our generation is basically trying to speedrun life. Yeah, that's how I would put it. So the other thing is these expectations that we have. So, like I said, I think we have the highest expectations of one another than any generation. In yesterday's video, I talked about dating, how women have the advantage in this, and there's a small percentage of men that get this attention because they meet all of these little check boxes and stuff like that. And so it's not necessarily that we are lazy or unmotivated. It's that we have a lot more troubles than those other generations before us, I think. And not to say we have all these family, work, school, and stuff, and not that the generations before us didn't have those sort of expectations to do. And surely, like certainly, like we balance them as well. I think it's just a lot more complicated. And you see all those memes. It's like Generation Z, born into what is it? Born into like after the depression or something, and then a war with Iran, can't even get a job, graduates with AI, takes all their jobs, all those sort of memes and stuff. And while somewhat those are partially true, I don't think it's unreasonable to balance all these sort of things. But with an increased expectation, it doesn't seem enough. And for the generations before us, that was kind of like the maximum that they could do, and now we're trying to do even more, right? um, and so I don't really think it's a good thing to, want to speed run life, definitely. I think you should find the things that you enjoy in life and kind of like work at your own pace. But there are definitely the people that are all grinding, all hustle, and I'll get to why that might be a bad thing in an example, a real life example that happened, that I saw play out on social media. Um, I like this AI pigeon over here. If you've seen it around, it's an interesting video. AI is getting crazy. Another thing to say is you can't beat everything, right? Like I said, there's always exceptions, but there's always a bigger fish in the pond, right? Most people give up at this point, like in their life or even later, let's say you get married and, most marriages end in divorce sort of thing, that might be a stage, but there's always a turning point, right? And I think for our generation, it is a lot younger than most generations. Like if we look older, it's like usually a divorce or it's losing a job, like the Great Depression and stuff like that. But for us, it can be as simple as going through college, not being able to pass through college, or it might be losing a loved one or something like that. And like a lot of these simple things are extremely detrimental, right? And so our generation is a lot more social, and I think as a result of these expectations that we have for one another, it's mostly that a lot of our generation is lonely, and a small percent of the population gets the attention from all these this checklist over here that I have, right? Um, and so that kind of contributes to that loneliness, right? But I do think starting early definitely will yield you more success. I think time is like of the essence, right? You hear everybody when they talk about investing, when they talk about building a business, and obviously these are subject to what you believe is success, right? Success is defined differently for people. Um, but I do think in general, like if you start early on something that you are passionate about and what you believe to be successful for yourself, you will have a better outcome, right? And so I kind of put this half-assly into this like kind of to-do or checklist, but based on like social media and interactions that I've had with people, I would say this is probably a pretty accurate depiction of like our to-do list that we kind of wake up every day and mindlessly do. And so that is, be rich and hot, be ambitious and fun, be smart and caring, travel and spoil other people and spoil yourselves. Go in your dream life mode, like go LARP online or try to, make yourself think that you can do this in a short period of time, get into the NBA and also, do real estate, whatever it may be, career wise, etc. Have a social presence. I think our social presence, because we grew up with social media, is extremely big. And I mentioned yesterday, like, that kind of like shapes how other people view you and how you view other people. I give the example of the Korean culture where there's in Korea, like they have the highest suicide rate, and most of that is attributed to something social related on social media. And yeah, so it's kind of like a to-do list. I don't know. Let me know if you agree with this or not. I think this is pretty accurate for, I guess, like a general person, what they would be looking to do for themselves, right? And then there's the small percent of people that get hungry. And what do I mean by hungry? So we have that small percentage of people that get all of that attention that I mentioned, but it kind of leads them into this not good enough mentality, right? There's always, I'm always striving to continuously improve. But when you continue to do that, you kind of self degrade yourself, right? There's always somebody better. There's always somebody better. How can I do this? And yeah, you kind of just like burn out, right? That's basically burnout in general. But I want to give an example here. What I mean by, if you're always in this sort of hustle culture, and you're trying to do this to-do list that our generation basically has set for ourselves, what that kind of does. And this is real. This is like kind of like true. I don't put like the actual person's name or anything like that. This is just like Japanese salary workers. So when I used to live in Japan, I saw the salary workers, and for the most part, they did not seem to be very happy. And so I kind of just attributed this real life example kind of toward this scenario, nothing related to the two. But um, so let's say this salary worker, they work very hard in school. They don't really have many friends. They kind of ignore them. They do, they have long nights working, studying, making sure that, they can get that job that they want. Always chugging caffeine. There's maybe smoking to release some of the stress. They go to the gym, but they don't really have a girlfriend. And then, you know, that's compounded over time, right? 15 years of all that hustling, you're learning, you're stressing about, this money, what you should do next, because you're finally ready after working all those years, and then you die from a heart attack. Now, this is like a kind of like a true example, or like a more so stereotypical or classic example of like working to death, right? You hear that saying a lot. Like you work yourself to death, and you don't really leave time for other people or to do the things that you love. And as a result, you kind of just burn out so much so that you have some health complications, right? And so this can kind of be attributed to like an average Japanese salary worker, I think. Let me know if you disagree, but from my perspective, I think it's pretty accurate that they're always tired, stressed, etc., stuff like that. So yeah, try to balance, speedrunning life and also the things that you do that you enjoy. For me, I like going to national parks. Pretty peaceful out there. Throw the phone away. But also sometimes you need to go on social media so I can post this video, right? So yeah, definitely balance. I really think is super important for our generation, but we have a lot of issues. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below.